At last we are to meet him, the famous Captain Spaulding, from climates hot.
Hi, this is Bob Sorrentino from Italian Roots and Genealogy, and I'm very excited today to have a great Italian American and the creator and the star of An Evening with Groucho, Frank Ferrante. So welcome, Frank. Thanks for being here.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Bob. Another great Italian American.
Well, I don't know about that. But thank you anyway.
Well, for today's purpose.
Yeah. So just, I want to talk a lot about Groucho, but before we do that, just a little bit about your background, the way you grew up and, your Italian family.
Well, I was born in downtown Los Angeles. But my family, if you were asking about my roots, three of my four grandparents were born in Bari. At the time, it was called Connecticut, and now it's referred to as Adelfia because two towns merged, Mondrone and Connecticut. So Adelfia is where my family now lives. That's still over there, and I've been there, and then they came over, most of them, to the United States in the early 1920s. My grandfathers did, and they were good friends. They played together in the old country in Connecticut when they were boys. And a lot of Italians who didn't stay in New York or anywhere else on the way to or anywhere else wound up. A lot of Italians wound up in Los Angeles. And there was the equivalent of a Little Italy, right where Chinatown is still to this day in Los Angeles. There was a large Hispanic community as well, right in downtown. And then the freeway cut through the downtown, and in the 50s, and a lot of those Italian families dispersed to the suburbs. And so I wound up in the San Gabriel Valley, the Pasadena area, as did much of my family. So that's how it happened. But so I grew up with, as I said, three grandparents from Bari, and I had one grandparent who was born in Los Angeles in downtown, lived there, Lincoln Heights. Lincoln Heights was a big area that for a lot of Italians in Southern California, in LA County, a real neighborhood, an Italian neighborhood. And there's still vestiges of that, still some families still there. But my other grandparents, my grandmother, Lucy Castiglione, before she married Frank Ferrante, she was from Sicily. Her family was from Palermo. So I grew up hearing the stories and indulging in and being, in the customs, the food, the holidays. Both my grandfathers spoke and broke with heavy accents. And the family was close in San Gabriel Valley. This is Arcadia, Pasadena, all that area, Sierra Madre, San Gabriel, and I felt really. The cousins were like, we're like siblings. There were 9 of us first cousins, three families, and the first cousins it was like having 8 brothers and a sister. So we're still close. We're all middle age, but my grandfathers, they picked grapes in the central, in El Centro, in 100-degree weather. I have a photo of my 2 grandfathers prior to their being married to my grandmothers in a field with other Italians, the poorest of the poor. My grandpa Tony remembers shining shoes and coming home with just a nickel in downtown LA. And they slowly kind of built their lives. My grandpa Francesco Ferrante, who I was named after, as the tradition goes, as you know.
Sure.
I was the firstborn. The firstborn son is named after the paternal grandfather. Secondborn, of course, is the maternal grandfather. My brother is Anthony. I'm Frank. And then, of course, there are certain rules that apply to those that come after. But so they were great friends as boys. As I said, they played together in the streets of Connecticut, and they lived within minutes of each other when they came over to America in Los Angeles County. And my grandmother spoke every day even though they're very different. My grandmother, who was born here, who had Sicilian roots, was very Americanized, was very modern. And my grandma Sophie Spano Torres, Torres is a Spanish surname, but she was Italian. He was Italian, my grandpa Tony. So was I. So my dad's parents were Francesco Ferrante and Lucy Castiglione. My mother's parents were Antonio Torres and Sophie Spano, and all of them were friends. So I grew up with this incredible extended family, very loving. I thought everyone was like that, and realized much later that I was very fortunate to have the situation that I had. And there was not a jerk in the bunch. It was very loving, and I was very close to all my uncles and aunts who are now starting to go. And I lost three of them this past year. Uncle Ralph Torres, Aunt Marie Torres, my Aunt Rose Torres passed away just recently. So that's where I am right now. And those of us who know what it's like to grow up with a close extended family know that those aunts and uncles were like mothers and fathers, if you were lucky. And that's what I had. I had very loving grandparents and uncles and aunts. And I travel as an actor since I was 22. It's been almost 38 years. And I always receive cards and letters and care packages and phone calls from that extended and more immediate Italian family of mine. So I was fortunate. There was music, there was laughter, there was card playing, there was lots of food. There are recipes from southern Italy, and I felt really in the desserts, the cookies, you name it, the sauce which I recreate for my own kids who are now one's late teens, one's 21. So I try to perpetuate some of those beautiful rituals and customs. My uncle, my dad's brother, my dad's name is Dominic. My mother's name is Teresa. Doesn't get much more Italian than that. And I have an uncle who's a priest, Father Frank Ferrante, Catholic priest. So I really, this is what I grew up with, a Catholic Italian upbringing.
Yeah, and that's wonderful. I say the same thing. My mom's family, there were 9 brothers and sisters, and to your point, they were all like aunts. My aunts and uncles were like moms and dads. They taught you right from wrong. If you got out of line, you got the little in the face, but the love tap, you know what I mean?
Right.
But you could go to them for anything. And
Yeah,
interesting, I didn't realize you were Barese, because that's my mom's family's from Torito in Bari.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, I saw that. I read that about you before we did this. No, you're right. About these uncles and aunts. They were so loving and supportive. They'd come to all my events, all my shows, all the games. We became very close, and I miss the ones that aren't here, for sure.
Yeah.
But feel very blessed that I had this experience, and still do. So through the cousins, we're still close and we support each other. Like I said, an aunt of mine passed away not too long ago, and we're all over each other, texting and calling and supporting. And that is real salve, real balm when you're going through sorrow and loss, to have loved ones to that extent.
Yeah, and I guess my mom's last brother passed away a couple of years ago, and growing up with 9 of them, and then as they pass, it's a little piece of you goes
Yeah.
every time. How did they wind up in Los Angeles from Bari?
Well, the weather is similar for one thing. It's a desert, it's dry. It's very similar to southern Italy. And my grandfathers had family here already. Why they came, I don't know. I know that my grandpa Tony, Antonio Torres, came over because he had a place to go. He had someone to stay with. He lied about his age. He said he was 16. He was actually 14 years old. So he was on that boat at age 14. I don't know. I get choked up. I appreciate it now that, because I've had kids, and he was 14. He never went back to see he went back to see his parents one time from the time he was 14. And his father was in his 80s at the time, in his mid 80s, and his mother was in her 90s, and they died shortly thereafter. And my grandpa Tony took my grandma Sophie and his 1-year-old son, Leonard, my uncle Leonard, who's still alive at 92. And they basically, what would happen is that you'd come over here as an immigrant, as a kid, and you'd send money back home, and they'd hold the money for you. So they said, and they did. They said, Tony, if you want that money back, you come out and see us come see us for one last time. And they took the boat back, and it was, he's talks. It's a kind of a momentous occasion. I went back to Bari, and his wife, my grandma Sophie, was one of my favorite, if not my favorite person. She lived to be 93, and if she used to send clippings of my work, not that I'm Laurence Olivier anyway, but she would send little articles from Los Angeles Times, New York Times, reviews from different shows. And so I went to Bari. I went to Adelfia on my 50th birthday, and I didn't know that my grandma had been doing this. And I went to see family there, and they took out this folder. It was like a Frank Ferrante folder with all the articles and photos. It was very, very moving. And you know how it is there. You go there, starts out with you're around the table with family. The next day there were 25 people at a restaurant, and people come out of the woodwork. And I have cousins there, and I have blood there, but it just kept snowballing. It was a very beautiful, moving moment. But to think, I think about that photo of my two grandfathers in that vineyard, and I realize I'm here because of the sweat off their backs.
Mhm.
I'm here because they did all the heavy lifting, literally, and I'm able to pursue something that I love. That's the difference. I'm able to do what I love. Those who came before me did what they had to do to survive. They set up a scenario where I can pursue the arts, which to some might seem frivolous and not necessarily important in a way. It's not. It seems something that may not be considered. What would the word be? Something necessary. But to me, the arts are. I've learned they are necessary. They keep music and humor and art, and I come from that perspective, is what makes life bearable and beautiful and worth living. That's my experience, and I know certainly the pandemic has kind of shown that to be the case. We go to Netflix, we're looking for entertainment, we're looking for music, we're looking for so-called live Zoom, performances. We crave it. We need connection. And but back to my point, I wouldn't be in the situation to pursue something that I love without someone. My grandfather was a butcher. My grandpa Frank. My grandfather Tony went from shining shoes outside a liquor store to owning a liquor store, and that put 3 families through schools. And there's a lot of gratitude I have for my family. But so when I look at those two kids, those two 20-somethings in that photo, and that fading, yellowing photo of them, that vineyard in Southern California, I am so grateful. And the fact that one day their 2 kids would get married. I have a photo of my parents holding hands at age 5, because that's how close these families,
Wow.
that's how close Italian families were, kind of set up a little bit because the families loved each other. And that's not always great in a way, but sometimes those marriages work, sometimes they didn't. So
Yeah, yeah. But you bring up an
there you have
interesting point, and that kind of leads into, an evening with Groucho, because
it.
you know, I think what you're doing is you're bringing generations that may not have been exposed to the Marx Brothers and to the wit and the glory of Groucho. I mean, I could gush about Groucho. I love the man.
Right.
And I've been, probably about you. I probably got first exposed to him when I was maybe about 10 or something like that, watching,
Right.
watching the old movies on TV. And I actually remember watching You Bet Your Life live.
Really.
So yeah, yeah. I mean, I was born in 51, so it was on the late 50s, early 60s.
Yeah, it went off the air in 61,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
you were a 10-year-old when,
Um,
yeah.
so how did you become, how did you start, doing the Groucho thing?
Well, and that kind of expanded beyond Groucho. It's fortunately because of Groucho that I became an actor and a director and a producer of theater, and been able to do some television because of it. But I my love for it came through exposure to those films. I saw A Day at the Races when I was about 10, and I'd never seen anything like it. I laughed so hard, and there was something so I couldn't, and now I can explain it, but it was subversive and irreverent and wild. In a way, there was an adolescent quality because they were unfiltered and free. There's a childlike quality to them in a way in terms of their freedom of behavior and speech. And as a young kid, and a kid that was taught by nuns in Catholic school, it was very, very appealing, Bob. So I wanted to treat the nuns the way Groucho treated Margaret Dumont, and I say that, but it's true. They were empowered, and they created their own universe, and they worked in chaos. Chaos is what, and they were able to throw their worlds off, their worlds off the axis, and so they could then control their lives, and their within these films. And Groucho certainly bled into Groucho's personal life as well. So that's how I just became completely enamored, and their work took my breath away, and I became obsessed with the Marx Brothers, but comedy. And that expanded over the years. And I did a lot of research where I grew up in Sierra Madre, California, which is in the Pasadena area. And I read about comedy and comedians, and I'm still fascinated. And I'm doing a show right here in Chicago as we speak, which is in a way inspired by that kind of vaudeville Marxian humor, very interactive, very improv based, my own creation. I play an Italian character, Fortissimo Vincenzo Luciano Castiglione, which is kind of draws from my own roots and my grandfather's journey. So it's a bit of a send up on that, but really is connected. The music is a great deal of Italian themed music, from Santa Lucia to That's Amore. All that's within the show that I'm doing. It's called Cabaret Zazu, and it's in Chicago. I'll be there through August, actually, of 2023. But it's funny we're talking about. It's very, very. My family very much has inspired this new character I've come up with. It's a cirque cabaret show right in downtown, and it's the kind of entertainment I've been doing for over 2 decades, along with the Groucho show, which again is which I tour with to this day with the one man show, which is very interactive and also an immigrant. It's an immigrant's humor. It's an outsider's humor. That's what Groucho and the Marx Brothers humor is in part, I believe. Those who are trying to fit in and tearing down high society and finagling their way through it all. All of it appeals to me.
Well, and I was doing a little research. I mean, I read most of the books years and years and years ago, but I didn't realize until the day before yesterday, I think, that Chico was actually Chico, and I was looking for the reason behind the Italian character that he played, and it was because he used to impersonate. If he was in trouble, he would speak like the people that he was in trouble with, Italians or Irish or whatever, to try and talk his way out of getting beat up.
That's right, because there were a lot of Italian gangs or Irish gangs, and so he took on those accents to avoid any kind of pummeling he may have gotten if he was in the wrong neighborhood. So that was a survival mechanism, really, for him. He had a good ear, so he was able to pull it off.
Yeah, no, and like I said, I had never heard that before. And the other thing that I didn't realize, although I remember seeing it in the movies, was Groucho was the first one to actually address the audience in the movie.
I believe so. He broke the fourth wall.
Yeah.
Look, I got to stick around, but there's no reason why you folks can't go into the lobby until this blows over. I mean, that's all. Yeah, I mean, their first film, The Coconuts, was in 1929, so that was one of the first movie musicals. I guess the first talking musical or film was the Jazz Singer, of course, with Al Jolson. But so Coconuts came about shortly thereafter. But yeah, I mean, who doesn't love his asides? Whether it's in the films or on his quiz show, You Bet Your Life, for 14 years, or on talk shows with Dick Cavett when he throws a line out to us. There's nothing better.
Yeah, and I recall watching George Burns and Gracie Allen, and and he did it, to a great
Oh yeah.
extent. But I was always fascinated that boy because he used to have the TV show going, and he was watching TV and he was watching what was going on,
Oh, I
in the
know.
other room.
George Burns.
George Burns, yeah.
Yeah, it was a very much a meta scenario. It's clever, that device they use. It's like with Seinfeld bookending with his stand up in his show, in the way the use of addressing us, the audience, in a way.
Yeah, yeah. And what I find fascinating about Groucho, I guess, unlike, the rest of the Marx brothers, he had a really big career after the movies, in TV, Bet Your Life and all that. And, I was watching some of the reruns of You Bet Your Life. And he was on that show several times as a guest or as a panelist. And John Daly,
Or
he couldn't
what's
get through the show. I'm
or
sorry, not You
what's
Bet
my
Your
line?
What's My Line? Right, What's My Line?
Yeah, right. His show was You Bet Your Life,
You
but he's
Bet Your Life.
hilarious on what's
Yeah.
great. Again, he causes chaos and he breaks the convention, and that's what we love about him. He does all the things we want to do. He says all the things we could only dream about saying. He's completely inappropriate. I mean, I think about all the time how I bite my tongue when I'm on social media. I want to, we all do it. We all, and he's so incorrect, and so brash and so irreverent. This is what I love. What we love about him. Those of us who are fans, and there are a lot of us. It turns out. I just posted a photo of Groucho at age 82 on. I have a Facebook page called An Evening with Groucho for the show. There were 20,000 likes on that. I mean, it's like
Mm.
crazy. There's a kind of there's always, it comes in waves, this interest in Groucho, and because I mean my show was just on PBS this past year, beginning last April. It's been broadcast 600 times in three-quarters of the country and is available for streaming internationally now. Robert Bader produced that Dick Cavett Groucho American Masters PBS special, which has been playing throughout the country. There's a lot going on with us, with him. He's still very much present through these types of works, and he's accessible, and he piques the interest of a lot of new audiences because of the PBS exposure that's been quite present in the last year.
But one of the things I thought was really neat that you do, is that you say that you're not going to be doing this, you're not going to be able to do this forever, and you take a young boy out of the audience, and I'll let you say what you do.
Oh no, I start putting makeup on his face if there's a kid out there, and there's not always a kid out there. If there's not a kid out there, I just do more improv. But I have been known to bring a kid up on stage and make him up on Groucho, make him do the Groucho walk to "Hooray for Captain Spaulding," and and I realize now it was done kind of just out of just a whim. One time, I brought a kid up there, and I realized it became kind of a metaphor. I don't know what you want to call it. Just a way that continues through generations. I didn't think of it consciously that when I was first doing that, I was like that kid wearing makeup and as Groucho and playing, and a lot of us who grew up in the 70s and 60s and 70s, even early 80s, who were in love with Groucho. Yeah, that's fun to do. And it's funny, years later, something I once did that. I did a show in Kansas City, and I was at the meet and greet table, meeting the audience members afterward. After it was the Folly Theater in Kansas City, where the Marx Brothers actually played, and there was this young man. I don't know, probably late 20s, maybe 30, and he had a beard. He goes, you pulled me on stage when I was 7 years old and dressed me up like Groucho. And I went, you got to be kidding me. So I hear a lot from the parents of these kids, and I hear from the kids sometimes. And the really the most wonderful thing or beautiful thing I can hear is that because of you, I want to go into the theater or comedy or clowning. And that's been satisfying as kind of a byproduct. It wasn't my intent, but I think maybe it somehow maybe inspired some young people, and that makes me feel proud and happy. But it certainly wasn't something I set out to do. I just was trying to make a living and get some laughs and do what I like to do, and all that was achieved. But the fact that there is this residual effect, or this, some kind of impact that it has on young people, that makes me feel really good. And we'll be watching Groucho for hundreds of years. I'm so happy that the show that I've been doing for 35 plus years, for thousands of performances, is now recorded, and it exists for all. Once I'm gone, it still will go. It'll play on, and that delights me, because I've spent so much time working on that show since I was in college, and now it's out there as Frank Ferrante's Groucho, and on the road you can see it on as An Evening with Groucho, Frank Ferrante in An Evening with Groucho. So,
and I got to play Groucho once, and it was so much fun.
oh,
And well, we did the stateroom scene. The boss, when I worked at Chase, the boss wanted every one of the groups to come up with a little skit that they were going to film, 5-minute type of thing or something like that. So
right,
I picked one of the guys that worked for me. I says, you work on it, you come up with something. So he came up with doing the stateroom scene. We were in IT, so we instead of ordering food, we were ordering a computer system. So Chico and Harper were ordering the computer system, and I was Groucho, bringing in all the people and everything. And
brilliant.
and he said, I proposed it to the people, the guys who were doing the film, and he said they all kind of like looked at me and like looked the other way, and but thinking for about 30 seconds, and then they came back and said, "Okay, we could do that." And we filmed it in black and white. I said, "We have to do it in black and white. We can't do it in color." And the funniest thing was, I'm in the bathroom at one of the big offices for Chase, and I'm putting on the mustache and the eyebrows, and people are walking into the bathroom and looking at me and like running out. What the hell is going on with this guy?
Oh, that's funny.
Because I'm putting on the grease paint and everything, and I have the towels on and all that. And but we had such a fun time doing it, and so now they had to show
Right.
it. We hadn't seen it. Nobody had seen it except for the guy who worked with the film, as he saw the final copy. And so we're waiting for it to come up, and we're in a room with 300-400 people, and I'm sitting there, and the sweat is going down, and people were just hysterical for 5 minutes. We had them rolling in the aisles. That's how much fun it was. But uh, I, I
No, there's
I could
there's
just
real power.
imagine doing that for a living.
Oh yeah. Well, there's a real. It's very freeing to put on the grease paint, because you can, like, again, say and do what you want to do and take on his persona. And I think that's
Yeah.
felt by anyone who's ever put on those glasses or something, that you're protected. It's a mask. You're wearing a mask, and that's what it gives you. It's like wearing armor in a way. So no, I'm
Well,
glad.
after we made the film, we went up to the floor where we worked, and we were walking around as the Marx Brothers, and people just thought we were. But again, you could do
Uh,
you could walk into people's cubicles, you could say anything you wanted.
right.
So I have to ask you. I want to ask you a couple of things. What's your favorite scene with Groucho?
Oh, I like Day at the Races was my first experience with the Marx Brothers, as I mentioned, and I love the doctor exam scenes. He's so funny, and he's physical and he's verbal. I love the examination of Harpo. It's with Chico. It's great. It's so well timed, and that's one of those films that they tried out on the road. They took scenes and they toured around and timed the laughs and changed the material before they shot the film at MGM, and so it's very precise. And so that's I love when Groucho sings. So I love Everyone Says I Love You when he sings on the canoe with his
Yeah.
guitar, which shot right in L.A. Uh, I love watching Hooray for Captain Spaulding. Just about any time he is, I love I'm Against It. Almost everything he does in Duck Soup is
Oh yeah,
kills me.
yeah.
First, I saw the stateroom scene, as you are having behind you, that photo, and that you did as part of your work sketch. That's one of the great scenes. This when you see it the first time, there's nothing like it. To see those bodies pile up and then pile out that door as Margaret Dumont opens the stateroom door. It's hilarious.
Yeah, we had the big boss open up the door and we all fell out. Uh, but again, in that scene, he's always got everybody who walks in, he's got a little something to say about, about them coming in. My favorite,
Right.
I think my favorite is I love the the password scene.
Oh yeah, Swordfish,
Yeah,
Horse
swordfish.
Feathers. Feathers. Horse Feathers is right up there as one of my favorite of their films too. So great. He's so good in that. And that swordfish scene is a funny scene.
Yeah,
Love
that's a great scene. And if you have one, it's hard to pick one, I know. What's your favorite one-liner with Margaret Dumont?
Oh gosh, a lot of these lines are now out of favor because of the times we're in, but you always need context. Margaret Dumont, who I love, was also a clown, just as
Mhm.
much as Groucho was a clown. As Groucho was the fighter, throwing rocks at the windows, Margaret Dumont represented, as like power and establishment and the fat of the land and the elite and the privileged. I can see you right now in the kitchen bending over a hot stove, but I can't see the stove. Come, say the word, you'll never see me again. I'll meet you tonight under the moon. I can see it now, just you and the moon. You wear a necktie, so I'll know you. Why don't you beat it? Let you down building where you're standing. You can leave in a taxi. If you can't leave in a taxi, you can leave in a huff. If that's too soon, you can leave in a minute and a huff. You haven't stopped talking since I came in. You must have been vaccinated with a phonograph needle. There's so many great lines that he has with her. And I think he's at his most relentless, though, in Duck Soup when he has that exchange with her early on in the film. They're great together. They're a great clown combo, and she's brilliant in her response. Very much knowing exactly, the technical approach that they're doing. I mean, it's she knows what's going on. There's always that story that she doesn't understand any of the jokes. Well, you can't do what she's doing. She's an actress. She's been doing it for decades. She is a crafts person. She knows what she's doing. She knows how to set him up. She knows about timing. She knows how to come in on her line. She knows when to back up when there's a laugh. I mean, that's not an accident. That's not some person off the street who is, a dowager or a society matron. This is a seasoned performer. So together, you've got two seasoned performers, who know exactly how to make comic exchange work. One's straight person, the other's the comic, and they're a great duo. Some of my favorite probably my favorite parts of Marx for the films are their exchanges, their scenes.
Yeah, no, definitely, definitely. Those and when he's trying to be the lover. And then he,
Okay.
you know, he
When he's wooing her for to get the cash, to get the power, or to get that's always funny. Sure, and I love when
yeah.
loved when he dances with Dumont and Esther Muir and change your partners. All that, those are funny scenes, and he's a very skilled dancer as well. He's very athletic. All three of them were, but he moves really well. As you can see through Captain Spaulding and numbers like that.
Yeah, and I remember, I don't know if you remember, but I remember in 1973 waiting for Animal Crackers to come to the theater because it
Right,
was never on TV. And I
right,
was 22, and my friend and I were just like, "Oh, when is this coming out? When are we going to be able to go see this?" And it was an experience because we had
right,
never seen the Marx Brothers in the theater before. We only had seen them on TV.
right. Well, yeah, that film ended up being reissued in '74. I saw it in the theater in '76. But to this day, the best way to experience a Marx Brothers film for anyone who's watching this or listening to this is to see it in a revival house, in a theater. I saw A Night at the Opera at the Orpheum Theater in downtown Los Angeles probably 30 years ago, and the laughter, you can see why. You felt like you were back in 1935, and
Mm.
that film was one of those films that was taken on the road. They took the scenes again live and tried them out in Salt Lake City, San Francisco, etc. So by the time it was shot, they knew where the laughs were going to be. To watch it on TV, you're wondering, why is there a pause here? Why are the Marxists pausing? Why are there gaps? It's because those films were designed for a lot big audiences in theaters, not on a small little screen, and not for an audience watching a little screen with, their husband or wife. or partner, whatever. So, but the laughter, I remember seeing that film that night at the opera, and the Marx Brothers' names on the screen were getting applause. Margaret Dumont's name got applause. George S. Kaufman and Maury Riskin, the writers, got applause because it was an audience in the know, who can
Yeah,
appreciate
yeah, yeah.
the product.
Yeah, it must have been something to see them. I know that they played. We had it's gone now, unfortunately. We had an RKO Keats theater. I don't know what it was before the RKO, but it was in Flushing in New York. And I know they played there, and it was one of those. My wife and I were talking about it the other day. She's from Manhattan. All those grand theaters with the balconies and the ceiling that with the stars on it and the balcony, the steps going up. They're all starting
Yeah,
to fade away. So,
I've played a lot of those theaters, not a lot, but some. There's a lot of some Fox theaters. I remember being in Madison, Wisconsin, a beautiful theater there, and yeah, they're unusual. Really, they're you don't get a lot of that, as you say. A lot of them have been torn down, unfortunately.
well, yeah, and I think a lot of them were probably built for vaudeville. They certainly weren't built for movies.
No, they're
Um,
vaudeville.
that's why I was really looking forward to talking to you because
Well,
I I
thanks,
just
Bob.
I'll say it again. I just love the Marx Brothers.
Me too.
I mean, I was in. I must have been 20 something, 21, 20, 21, and I had hernia surgery, and uh, I think it was horse feathers, and the guy next to me was a little older than me. He had the same surgery, and we were trying not to laugh because our sides hurt so much. We're watching the Marx
I
Brothers,
love
and
it.
we're hysterical and holding our hernia surgery together.
Well, they did their job. Well, I appreciate this time here, Bob. Thank you so much.
Oh,
I
thank you.
appreciate
No,
it.
I appreciate it. And for anybody who wants to see the show in Chicago or wants to be able to see the film, how would they find you?
Well, there's a website that has all this information. It's www.eveningwithgroucho.com, and all my itineraries there. Eveningwithgroucho.com. And the show that I'm currently doing, which is this great variety show, is also on that, but it's cabaretzazoo.com, ZAZOU.com, Cabaret Zazu. So thank you for that. Appreciate it. So
Oh, thank you very much. And I appreciate it.
thank you, Bob. Have a great one.